The moment you go on YouTube, sometimes they can be heavy on the censorship. So it takes a couple days. What up, folks? Once again, it is indeed your boy Tim, the handsome liberal. I'm not going to squash the fact or pretend like this live will not have an issue that is quite controversial. Hopefully it holds up, but I'm not going to deny that what we're going to be talking about today is controversial because the forum is going to be open for anyone to give their spiel on why this is. As you see, the video is titled Black Community and Crime. I want to ask this question because it's not necessarily just aimed at folks in the black community, but folks who are outside the community. I want to get your opinion on this as well. When you hear folks in the black community complain about things in this country, it's often racist-based, police, things of that nature. Systemic racism is the primary complaint coming from African Americans. Nevertheless, there is no denying that if you are an African American and you are the victim of a crime or something awful, the chances are highly likely that it came at the hands of another African American. So we're asking the question, why is it that the African American community seems to only be concerned with issues that do not happen in the African American community when that is what is most pressing and what is most dangerous to us in the African American community? I want to ask you folks, we all have a different opinion on this, but I want to ask you folks, why do you believe that the African American community, and you don't have to be African American to answer this, but why do you believe the African American community is more focused on systemic racism, police violence, and things of that nature when there is a far greater chance of an African American being harmed by a fellow brother? This is just a statistical fact that if you are black and something happens to you, chances are the person that did it to you is going to be black. They're not going to be wearing a badge. Has nothing to do with systemic racism. Yet we keep focusing on it. So I want to hear from you folks. Why do you believe that is? What is the benefit to doing that? If your biggest threat is coming from within the community, focusing on things that are outside the community does you no good at all. That's what we're asking. Looking in the comments, for the simple reason it's something they have been preached to for years and years by the Democratic Party. Well, I will say this, and by the way, tap the screen. Get your boy up to 5,000 likes. As always, the program is and shall forever remain MAGA friendly, but liberals are welcome as well, particularly on this topic. I don't block, ban, or censor anyone, regardless of your commentary, and this topic could lead to some interesting commentary. So understand when you come in the box, I'm not going to censor you or limit your time in any way simply because you and I may disagree. But why is it that the African American community, in your humble opinion, seem to focus on things that most African Americans are not dealing with? I'm not here to deny that systemic racism in some areas may exist. There may be some privilege that does exist, but the average African American going through some problems, whether it is loss of life, being robbed, or something of that nature, is having this happen to them at the hands of another black person. Why is that? That's what we're asking. Now, looking in the comments, James Duke says, correct, brother. Yeah, I hate to be correct on this, but I want to get your opinion on it. Lion can say the same thing with white folks. True, but that's not what we're talking about, but that is true. But by the way, you don't hear white people complaining about systemic racism, though. So that is the issue. We're complaining more about that and more about police corruption when we have a major in-house problem. That's not happening with the white community. They're not complaining about systemic racism or corruption of that nature. If they're being abused by other whites, they're going to complain about that, at least from what I hear. Looking in the comments, we'll go straight to the box. The dude, shout out to Bill and Ted. I'm a big Bill and Ted Excellent Adventure fan. So why do you think that is? And by the way, folks, you don't have to be an African American to tackle this question. Why do you believe Duke? Why do you believe us folks that look like me seem to be focused more on problems that we're less likely to face than the in-house issues we're going through every day.
Well, you got the cat by the tongue. I didn't realize this was going to be the discussion. I'm white, so I can't talk about that, man.
You can give an opinion on it.
My opinion is that survival of the fittest, man.
Explain
Like
that. What do you mean by that?
like everybody is trying to survive, and what I don't
But
want
what
to
is?
be
But think about this though. If it
I don't want you thinking that like I'm some whatever. I'm
no,
not.
wait a minute. Hold on a second. Understand, on this program, I don't censor free speech. I do not talk down to guests. You can say whatever the hell you want. You're not going to be stopped or limited by yours truly.
Yep.
Give me your opinion.
My opinion is you got all these big cities that are all run by the same people over and over and over and over. And nothing changes, nothing changes, nothing changes, and nothing changes. So I think a lot of it is due to the area that you grow up in, but a lot of it I think is also comes to a political thing where it's politicians that are making life harder for people, and that's my humble opinion.
Now, I will say this. You do realize that African Americans that even live in Republican areas have these same complaints. I just brought that up because you said it, people getting,
Mhm.
living in areas they keep getting ran by the same people.
Right.
Even folks who live in towns that are predominantly red, they complain about the same stuff.
No, and like I said, I don't understand it. I don't under Politicians in general are just like afraid to go into areas that normal people would want to go to. Like for me, for example, I used to be a police officer. I used to go into the troubled areas where nobody says don't go in there unless you have a platoon. I would
Uh-huh.
go in there and talk to people and just talk with them. Ask them, hey, what's going on in your neighborhood? What can I do to change it? Is there anything that you expect out of me to whatever? And I would go into these communities and just talk to people. Just
I'm curious.
talk to
Not
them.
only am I curious, but folks in the comments are too. If you don't mind, what
Mhm.
city, what municipality were you in?
I lived in Colorado. I'm not going to
Okay.
tell you where,
All
but
right.
it was in
Fair enough.
Colorado.
Fair enough. Because I
Um,
wanted to follow up and ask you, as a former law enforcement official yourself,
mhm.
why do you believe it is such an awful relationship between blacks and law enforcement?
I just think it's I don't think there's a stigma, and I believe there's not enough people or law enforcement officers that are, I guess, how am I how am I going to say this? I guess there's not enough people in law enforcement that are not about the community aspect.
So
Me,
you do believe in regards to the poor relationship between the black community and cops,
mhm.
cops do have some responsibility in it.
Absolutely, 100%. I agree. I agree, and I think they should. Don't. I'm sorry. Only God can take me out of this world. I'm gonna go. Hey, if I have to go into a bad area, I'm going into that bad area. And if I can go talk to people and educate people, or talk to them and just talk to them in a civil discussion, I'm doing it. I don't give a shit who you are. You could be like, a cartel leader. I'm coming to talk to you.
Wow.
And so that I mean, that's end of discussion. That's the way law enforcement should be. It should be community policing. It should be all about your community. I don't care if you're white, black, Asian, Hispanic. I don't give a shit. It's your community. It's your house. You need to take care of your house. That's the way I feel about it.
Why? And you're admitting that doesn't. There's not enough of that in the law enforcement community. Why do you think there are so few officers that are willing to do what you suggested that you did?
I have a feeling. I feel like that. A lot of people, like I said, the stigma of f the police, every stuff like that. But at the same time, I feel like that they're just too scared
Mm,
to go in those areas.
yeah.
I do. I mean, I was a field training officer, and I used to train rookies right out of the academy, and I could tell within the first 2 weeks if you're going to cut the mustard or not, and
Damn.
um, and so like you have to approach it in a way as, hey, I'm not here to harm you. I'm here to be I'm here to be um, your neighbor. I'm here to help you. Um, you know, hey, I know you. You don't trust me, but let me gain your trust.
Now,
Give me.
in your particular area, did you notice that African Americans were more resistant to law enforcement, perhaps than whites, maybe more likely to run or fight back or talk shit? Did you get that type of? Did you get that kind of feedback in your area?
I got. It was different. I can tell you right now, it was the white community that hated the cops more than anything, and
Wow.
I'm being straight up. I am being straight up. They fucking hated us
Mm.
because it was always the same. Sorry for cussing on your
No, you
podcast.
good. You good.
Um, um, but it was always the same people that we were nabbing. It was the same people over and over and over and over again, and it was just like the minority community that I lived in. They're like, hey, keep going after those white folks. Ain't got shit to do with me.
All right, I do got to move it on, but I have to ask you this
No,
since you have a law enforcement background. It's
yeah,
very common for African Americans to suggest the police are constantly profiling them, wrongfully stopping them, and up to and including even pinning false charges on them. Do you believe African Americans have any validity at all in suggesting that cops are treating them differently, more harshly than other folks?
I do.
Wow.
I've seen it.
Give me some
Unfor-
examples.
it it's an unfortunate, but I've seen it. I've just seen it throughout my law enforcement career. It's like, you know, uh, especially if you like live in a very rural county, you know everybody. You know everybody in that community, and a lot of times, like when people would see people that don't belong, it didn't matter about race, but if they saw somebody that didn't belong to that community and they did something wrong, like a traffic infraction, they're pulling that car over and be like,
You
"Hey,
know you're sounding a hell of a lot like a Jason Aldean song.
no, oh, don't hit me with that.
I mean, you really are. You sounded a
Don't
hell
hit
of
me
a
with
lot
that."
like that song.
No, and I'm just telling you from my experience. Um,
Yeah.
I wasn't like in a very large city. I was in a big one, but not like a large city. You know what I mean? And so, but like I do believe that there's certain localities where I'll tell you right now. I'm not shy to say it. There are some police officers out there right now that have the badge that should not be anywhere near the badge, and it's sad because you know my belief is that with recruiting numbers and everything's hit very all-time lows, they're trying to just get anybody to get by at this point,
Mm,
just to get the numbers
yeah.
up. You know what I mean?
And that's
And
not going to help
but
it. That's not going to help
no,
anything at all.
I'll tell you right now. I was a field training officer, and out of my short lived career, 7 years, I was 7 years in law
That's
enforcement.
long enough.
But in my 7 years, I can tell you that there was 5 people that I did not like within the first 3 weeks. I said, "You're not cut out for this job. Go find another agency or go back to the academy. This is not your thing. This is
How
not
big
your
was your
thing."
department?
My department, we had about 40 deputies.
Okay. All right. So you're county sheriff.
Yeah, I was county sheriff. Yep.
Okay. All
Yep.
right. All right. Appreciate you coming on, man. That's a
Yep.
very candid conversation. I do
No,
appreciate that.
no,
Come on back
absolutely, man.
anytime.
And
Good
be good.
talk. Yeah, you too. You too. I didn't expect that. All right. In the comments. Now, I'm going to I've obviously tap the screen, get your boy up to 10,000 likes. But what the question we're asking is, it's not uncommon to hear black folks complaining about police misconduct or systemic racism, even though there is a statistical fact that if you're an African American and something bad happens to you, the chances are highly likely that it happened from another African American. So we're asking the question, why do folks that look like me apparently seem to focus on something that is far less likely to happen than being victimized by another African American? There's a far, far greater chance that if you're the victim of a crime or mistreatment in any way, that your aggressor is another black person. Yet the black community focuses far more on racism, white privilege, systematic police issues, and things like that they're much less likely to encounter. I'm asking this question, but making it clear. I don't expect only black people to respond to it. You don't have to be black to have a damn opinion. And understand, when you come on in the box or in the comment section, I'm not going to block, ban, or censor you no matter what the hell you think. You can state how you feel. Doesn't matter if it's popular. Doesn't matter if it's contrary to the host. You're going to get to state your point. I'm not going to block, ban, limit, or censor your time in any damn way imaginable. Tap the screen. 15,000 likes. Program is always MAGA friendly. Liberals are welcome. Looking in the comments, Travis Parker says, "You're grifting." Grifting how? We talk about this shit every day. Been doing it for over a year. Oddly enough, it's grifting now? How? Come in the box. Let your boy know how the hell it is a grift. And I won't censor, block, or ban you no matter what type of comments you have towards yours truly. This isn't about a grift. It's about free speech. I want to know what's on the mind of the folks. Do you have a problem with that? There are a hell of a lot of echo chambers all up and down social media. I invite you to try one of those if you don't like allowing folks to speak. Looking in the comments, or better yet, in the box. We'll keep it moving with, I gotta go to, once again, the one and only Dr. Ruth. Good afternoon,
Okay.
Mr. Truth. So what do you think? Why the hell is it that racism seems to be the primary course on the menu?
Uh, I mean, I'm going to have the unpopular opinion, and you already know this,
It's
but
an unpopular topic.
right. I mean, it really is. For me, outside looking in, because we still have it in our own culture as well, is it's a culture, a victim of their own culture, right? No one is a human. The majority of us don't like self-reflecting on our own actions. So it's
So
easier to.
I have to ask you this, and I'll let you continue. Because
Mhm.
you said, victim of the culture, not wanting to reflect on your own actions. Some folks from the African American community might point to not wanting to teach CRT in schools as a method of folks not wanting to reflect on actions of the past. Do you see anything to that?
I don't know. I mean, I don't know if there's been enough time passed to really come up with solid numbers, right, to see if there's a direct correlation. And that's
Time
just
passed
me,
since what? Time passed since what?
just like for CRT. Sorry, I shouldn't even be reading the comments. I should just be talking to you.
Well, listen, I understand I'm asking a question that many folks would believe should only be answered by African Americans. Nevertheless, you are an American in this country and you are entitled to have an opinion. You don't have to be black to answer. We answer questions on how the white community behave and acts all the damn time. So I'm not going to censor you in it. But so you said basically a victim of your own culture. Explain that.
Yeah, I mean, it's. I can even bring it on to us white folks too. I mean, we got a bunch of crackheads running around stealing stuff, stealing from their own family, stealing people's prescriptions just to get high and to get money. It's no better. and those people fall victim to the police no different than any average criminal in any race, right? I mean, we hyperfixate on things that we really shouldn't. Even though
So,
racism is a problem. I'm not dismissing that because
in
that's
what
not
way?
the question.
I'm gonna ask you in what way, because it's not uncommon for folks that are white to say racism is not an issue. It ended hundreds of years ago. Give me your examples. How do you believe racism is a current problem in 2023?
Oh, I mean, it's so let's see. Like, if I'm being honest with myself, when people get frustrated and they get mad, they say things at the top of their mind for whatever reason that come off racist, right? Um,
Yeah,
but
but that's
there's
not
also
really
ignorance.
racism. That's just let me rephrase it. Like the last individual I talked to was law enforcement. He states that even within his own ranks, his own brothers in blue, he admitted
Mhm.
that there is African Americans that when they suggest that the police mistreat them, that's legitimate. Do you believe police in this country are mistreating black people, or do you believe it's just a matter of if you comply with the law, you wouldn't be having these problems?
Really, it's probably a 70-30 split. Like, is there 30% bad, absolute bad? They're out to do harm and against a black individual, regardless if they're innocent or guilty. Absolutely. I mean, that's just ill training and also um, the poor process of hiring, right? Just like
So
he
when
was
you
saying
say
before, they'll almost take anyone just to fill the position because it's a
But so
numbers
when you
game.
say remember, so when you say a 70-30 split, 30% of them being willing to do this bad stuff, remember there's a common statement that 99% of cops are good. You're making it clear there's a hell of a lot of bad law enforcement.
Oh, I mean, I don't think 99% of them are good. I mean, if I was to, dude, I was a troublemaker too, just like the best of them. And there was cops that I knew that I was going to get in more trouble than I should, and there was officers that I knew that they were going to treat me fairly, and business is business. I chose to do what I was doing, and he's that's his job, right? So, uh, and I'm a big tattooed white dude, right? Like, I mean, I'm
Yeah.
6'5", 300 pounds, covered in tattoos. So it's I don't want to get too far off that when it comes to you're a victim of your own culture, right? No different than they want to talk about poverty and stuff like that. Well, if you go and
Yeah,
really look at
but
the
wait a minute.
numbers,
If African Americans are saying they're simply being mistreated because of their skin color, there's no culture to that. You could be African American and acting as Hispanic or white as possible, but you can't change the color of your skin. So I don't know if that's just culture related, is it?
I mean, for per situation, you have to trust the person that was committing the crime and saying that they were respectful and compliant and at least up to
Yeah.
the law, right? Because I mean, there are officers, if they sit there and ask you, "Can I search your car?" Dude, I'm the whitest cracker on the block besides the color on that's tattooed on my skin, and I'm going to tell a cop to piss off. You ain't searching nothing, son. You know what I mean? Like, you got to know your rights. So if you say that and they start being disrespectful to you, that's a bad cop. The cop just needs to be like, all right, I'm not allowed to. It is
So
what it is.
and I agree with that 100%. In the comments, Pharaoh, I want you to give me your opinion on this. Pharaoh states the numbers don't lie. Blacks get harsher sentences. This is something that African Americans complain about all the time. Do you
Mm-hmm.
think there's any validity that if a black person commits a crime and a white person does, overall, statistically speaking, blacks tend to get harsher sentences for the same thing?
Well, I mean, I don't know because you can go towards the name brand um, cases like O.J. Simpson,
That's
right?
a very rarity, though. You do know
It
that
it
is a
is a
huge
rarity,
one.
but you can't also dismiss it, right? I mean, that was
No.
money. That was money that got him where he was at, right? So, um,
Yeah, but it's so rare. There is not another example to even provide.
I mean, this is my opinion, and I would like for you to correct me if I'm completely wrong.
Sure.
But you do have to do a little bit of math to truly make that statistic true, right? If you just went to numbers, if you just went straight up numbers, like we'll call it police brutality and just take it off of charges. more white people get police brutality against them than anything, right? Well, that's because we're in greater numbers. So that's obviously going to be higher. And
Right.
to create the victimization of blacks versus cops, you have to do mathematical equations to create that scenario. You have to say, well, there's a 90% chance, greater chance that a black man getting stopped by the police for doing something illegal, he's going to be mistreated versus a white man. But the only thing that made it that is math.
But okay, let me give you an example. You got more African Americans incarcerated for drug crimes than whites, even though all of the statistics show whites use drugs at the same rate as blacks. How does that
Mm-hmm.
work?
I don't mean this in a rude way, but maybe well, I mean, there's going to be corruption, obviously, right? That's going to be an obvious thing. But some people are just better at getting away with things than others.
So you said there's a bunch of skilled white criminals out there, pretty good at committing
Well,
crime.
dude, there's some career criminals on both sides that are impressive, bro. They
Yeah,
really
sure
are. I
enough.
mean, there's people out there doing stuff that, like, you're like, damn. And there's cell phones. We used to get away with half the stuff we'd get away with because there was no cell phones.
So at the end of the day, you believe police, for the most part, are treating everybody equally. You don't believe that African Americans.
No. I think 30% or more are out there because they got picked on in school and they're looking for authority and they want to abuse their power for
And they're
their own
abusing it
mental
on
health
minorities.
problems.
And you're saying that's on minorities.
That's on everybody, but it
Well,
is more
fact
apparent on
is,
minorities,
yeah,
right?
I mean,
It's more
fact is,
apparent on minorities because that's brought up more often.
fact is, by far, most cops in this country are white. I mean, when you think about how many different little police departments are in the country from different little counties and towns all over this country, there's very few police departments in America that have a predominantly black police force. I mean, outside of the major cities, most of the force is almost 100% white. So, unless they're going to have a bad time in school and start targeting other people that look like them, I'm assuming you mean minorities from that point.
But if they did, which is it's going to be obvious because there's more Caucasian or whites than there is any other race at this
Right,
time. But
right.
so that would, if you were to use that same equation for police brutality as a black man versus a white man, your percentages are probably going to stay the same versus how many white cops there is versus black cops. You go to El Paso, 90% of their force is Hispanic. It's
Right,
rare
right.
to see a white guy or a black guy, right? If you go to Chicago, I'm just guessing, right?
It's mostly white. I lived in
Yeah.
Chicago for 30 years. It's mostly white in Chicago. Although
And
there
when
are a lot of African American officers in Chicago, it's still more white people serving on the police force in Chicago even than blacks. If you go
yeah,
to the white neighborhoods in Chicago, there's not a lot of black cops floating around. If you're in a black neighborhood in Chicago, there are plenty of white cops driving through the
right.
neighborhood. So it's still mostly white.
And what do you think the reason of that is?
Oh, it's a bunch of reasons. First of all, in this country, historically, it was harder for black people to become cops, so they didn't pass the love for getting on the police force down to generations like whites have. Second thing is there is a huge anti-cop sentiment in the black community. So even in modern times, when you can become a cop as a black person, most blacks don't
Mhm.
want to become a cop because
Right.
me and the last caller was talking about, the relationship between blacks and police is so poor that the last thing most blacks want to do is grow up and become a cop.
But I mean, isn't it true that also if you want change, you have to inflict change?
100% agree with you there, but here is the problem. If you, let's say for instance, I want to grow up, when I grow up, I'm still a kid. When I grow up, I want to
Right.
become a police officer and I want to institute change. In an environment like the police force, where they have a thin blue line and essentially an anti-snitching clause, very similar to
Hmm.
street gangs, trying to implement change in the police department can be dangerous. They're not going to work with you when you're coming
Hmm.
in there talking about draining the swamp. That's not going to work in
Right.
most police departments.
So would you say full circle, it's a victim of culture since you're refusing to break the chain? If you were molded
I
by
can
that
see that.
culture and that ideology, right? technically
I can,
that's
I can see in my humble opinion, I believe the thin blue line is probably the biggest hurdle to fixing police departments is that they tend to circle the wagons around bad officers as opposed to pointing them out. So if you come and you try to institute change, you're going to become the bad guy versus the person who's actually causing the problem.
well, I mean, against the grain is always one of the toughest jobs, right? It's easy to
Right,
slide down. It's
right.
easy to slide down something when you're with the grain, and it's a little bumpier when you're against the grain. But if people, uh, I don't want to take people's voices away, right? But if you have a problem, go and do something about it instead of talk on a social media platform. And that's not an attack towards you. I'm just saying, in general, as Americans, you and I are on two separate sides of the aisle, right? And we can sit here and have this conversation, and we don't need to disagree or dislike each other because of our disagreements. We need to come together and really fix the root of the problem. And it's not my way is the way to fix it, and it's not your way is the way to fix it. Is we have two different things, two different opinions. How do we come together and fix the problem?
Well, I will tell you, and I got to move it on, but I will tell you this before we move on. You can also fix it from the outside in regards to if you believe your police department has a problem, you can vote in politicians who don't continue to defend the bad police department. If your department is constantly causing problems, and you got
Mhm.
one group of politicians that are always saying, I back the cops no matter what, and you are certain that they're doing wrong, then you need to vote that person out. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, but we're still just voting on the best liar, and me and you both know that,
I don't disagree
right?
with that. I don't.
There is
All
a
right.
TikTok famous officer with a dog, a canine officer, right? Actually, sheriff, I should say, sorry. That's on TikTok and has millions of followers. And I'm in a town of 800. Okay. I'm in a very small town in Wood County, Texas.
Okay.
And the guy is one of the most crookedest sheriffs out there that'll do side deals and the whole 9 yards. And people blow him up and make him famous because of his dog. His dog's cool. Yeah, sure. Whatever. You know what I mean? But, and people know it locally and they're too scared to do anything about it because they say he's too well rooted, right? Well, I've been against the grain with this guy from day one, and he hasn't even pulled me over one time,
Well,
right?
you got to understand. Sometimes small towns tend to like crooked cops because they believe that they're doing what's best for that town. Around
Right.
here
Oh,
we
no,
take
I
care of our
100%
own.
agree. Absolutely, 100% agree that
Yeah.
they're in it for the town, not the people, right?
Right.
Which
That sound
100%.
once again that fits those lyrics. Round here we take care of our own. Yeah, he's corrupt as hell, but he's doing what's in the best interest of that town. Maybe raising revenue by pulling people over, going 1 mile per hour over the limit, but he's only doing it to license plates from other areas, not the locals in town. He's taking care of his own, but he's corrupt
Well,
as hell.
I mean, you and I had that debate on that song, and I'm for the song, right? Because the citizens of that town just because they're not doing anything about it, no difference than why your reasoning for an African American doesn't go to be a cop because they're scared of the repercussions, right?
Right.
The town doesn't support him, and the town wouldn't agree with him. The town would back him if he got, if something happened to him, they would watch him walk away, holding arms, going, he's finally weak enough, he can't do nothing to us, right? So there's more to that song. I don't think this officer fits that song at all, in my opinion. But um,
Music is art. I gotta move it on, but music is art. Anybody can interpret art any different way. So you may have that interpretation. I may have a different one.
yeah,
That's how art works. Appreciate you coming
yeah,
on.
yeah, no
All right.
problem, man. You have a good day.
You too. You too.
In the comments, I wanted to bring this up. Somebody, Mr. Brading said, I don't care if any cop pulls me over, I'm not a criminal. Well, there's two issues to that. First of all, police officers are human beings. They make mistakes. Just because you're not a criminal does not mean they may not judge you as such. You got folks that
mishandle breathalyzers and lead to somebody getting the DUI that they're not supposed to get. Folks do searches on your car and actually determine they found drugs that happen to be, a piece of sugar or something on the ground. So when you say I don't want to, I'm not a criminal, I don't mind them pulling me over, you increase the possibility of something going wrong. You're assuming because you're not a criminal, the guy pulling you over is not one also. And there's no guarantee of that. Mistakes happen all the time. As both callers just stated, some cops have a chip on their shoulder. You don't know what the hell is on the mind of the cop that pulls you over. You could be 100% innocent, happy-go-lucky, and get pulled over by a bad cop. There's a video on YouTube, and I'll go back to the box. Hispanic man driving across the country. Veteran, middle-aged man, by himself, carrying about $70,000 on him. He was moving across country. He does not trust the banks, sold his house, got the money in cash, got pulled over on, I believe it was in New Mexico. They asked to search his car, found the money and seized it. No crime at all. Took all of his money to the point where he had to call somebody to help him get to his destination because he didn't even have gas money anymore. Took him 6 months to get his money back. He was very nice. The video's on YouTube. The cops asked, do you mind if we search your car? He was completely compliant. No reason at all to do that. They took 60, 70 grand off of that guy. Took him 6 months to get his money back. So, and that happens to a lot of people. I know people personally that have had their paychecks seized until they could come down to the police station and prove they actually earned the money. So it does happen. So when you say, I don't mind them searching me, you're expecting them to be just as kind and nice as you are. You have no guarantee of that. Going back to the box, it's not a crime to have cash. No, it's not a crime to have cash. But it's a crime to have cash you receive from proceeds of drug sales. We know drug residue is on the money most Americans carry. There are towns that have allowed people to seize your money if a dog reacted to drug residue on your money. A lot of people have lost money like that. 100% innocent, completely compliant, thought they had a very nice officer on their hands, and suddenly was out of a hell of a lot of money and had to prove that they earned the money. You can rest assured they didn't all get their money back. You can rest assured that. Going back to the box, tap the screen, get your boy up to 30,000 likes. Listen, folks, I understand this is not necessarily a popular topic. I'm asking folks of all different backgrounds to give their spiel on why African Americans focus more on racism and police corruption when the chances of something happening to an African American, the statistical probability of that is far greater than it came from another black person. A lot of people don't want to answer that question. Hell, there's a lot of black people don't even want me asking that to somebody else. But I'd like to hear what folks have to say, regardless of their background, skin color, or any of that. You're an American. You have an opinion. I want to hear it. That's what we're talking about. Moving on, we'll continue with EPS 480. Bro, I can't even walk my own street without being harassed. Damn. I'm curious to know what metropolitan area you're in. Wow, that's bad. Do you have a criminal record? Every time they're pulling you over that often? EPS, good afternoon.
Long time no talk there, Mr. Liberal.
Good to have you. Good to have you. So I'm assuming you've heard the topic. I do appreciate you holding.
Yeah, I heard.
Give me your spiel. What do you think? Do you think we're barking up the wrong tree? Do you think there's some legitimacy to it? Why do you think we focus so strongly on police misconduct and racism? Are those real issues to really be concerned with?
Well, the government's crooked as hell. We all know that. It don't take a rocket scientist to figure that out.
Does
Police
it
are crooked
change
too.
in regards to the government being corrupt? Does the corruption change depending on the party in office?
No, absolutely not. I think it's up to the human individual.
So we have corrupt, let's say, for instance, under the Obama administration, things were corrupt as hell. Trump came in promising to drain the swamp. You believe that under Trump, it was just as corrupt?
I believe the people under Trump are just as corrupt. I don't know if Trump was himself corrupt. I mean, he had misfortunes in Atlantic City and stuff, but he held money from companies, put companies out of bankruptcy, but that's just business. That's not really corrupt. That's kind of different.
Yeah, but if the team sucks, the coach doesn't get to say, oh, I'm a good coach. I mean, if you're the coach of the team, and Trump was certainly the coach of the people under him, if they suck, doesn't he hold responsibility for that?
You hold responsibility, but you're not the one who, delve out the laws that, it's in the individual's personality whether you're corrupt or not. It's not in who's ever leading. They got to take the fall for it because they're in charge. But it's not them that's doing the teaching to be corrupt. It's in the individuals. We can see that. We can see that in New York City. Look at all the corrupt people right now running New York City. It's some of the most corrupt ever. Eric Adams, for one, they have no idea how to run that big city. And just like out there in California, Gavin Newsom, one of the biggest idiots on earth. Trying to get rid of gasoline power. I just talked to a truck driver yesterday, of a Democrat. He just loved Gavin Newsom. I'm like, he's after your tractor and trailer, right? He's going to shut you down. You're going to have to buy an electric tractor and trailer, right? He didn't care at all, but it's his livelihood that Gavin Newsom's going after. That guy has no idea how to run that big state. You know what I mean? He has no idea. Gavin Newsom's an idiot.
So in regards to that, because one of my other callers talked about, when it comes to African Americans voting for the same politicians all the time, assuming, we tend to live in Democratic areas. Why do you believe yourself that big cities tend to be liberal? What is it about the Republican Party that big cities seem to shy away from? The top 10 cities in America, only, I believe, one of them, San Antonio, has an independent mayor. I don't think any of the top 10 largest cities in America have a Republican mayor. What is it about large cities that do not like the Republican Party?
Well, that's where all the money's at. That's where all the money's being stolen from. That's where all the money goes. So you tend to gather where all the money is, where all the handouts are, where all the
Republicans don't like money?
No, Republicans like money, but we don't. The social programs right now, everybody's leaning towards socialism, and Social Security and unemployment and stuff like that. It's a social program. We all know that by now. So the cities is where all the money goes, and that's where all the thievery's gone. Of course, that's where all the Democrats live. It kind of goes hand in hand.
But wait, this is not something new. We've had majority Democrats running major cities in this country for quite a while now. I mean, there has to be more to it than just that's just where the money is, isn't it?
That's where the money and jobs are. I can go to a big city. I can go to a big city tomorrow and get a job. Guarantee you 100% I can go to a big city tomorrow, Baltimore, Philadelphia, Pittsburgh, wherever. I can go there tomorrow and get a job. You go to a
Is that not a good thing?
It's you could see it as a good thing, but it's bankrupting the big cities. The big cities don't have pensions no more. Just look at Yellow Trucking Company, is going bankrupt, right?
I've heard that, yes.
They are literally right now going bankrupt. There's no more money going into pensions. There's no more money going to the 401s. They're fighting with the union leaders. The union leaders are fighting with the companies. Their unions they were good 50 years ago. We all know that. The unions suck nowadays.
But is what you're saying a big city issue, or is that just how capitalism has evolved? You mentioned lack of pensions. Where can you go in America where pensions are common anymore other than in government civil servant positions?
That's what I'm saying. The big cities have the pensions. The big cities have the city jobs. They're bankrupting the big cities. The big cities can't handle that much output. There's very little input. Look, people say how much California gives, how much California gives the federal government. But if you look how much they also take, they take more than any
But
other state in the country.
I'm still not understanding though, even if what you're saying is true to some degree. I don't understand why folks keep voting in big cities for Democrats if you paint it to be in such disarray. Why don't the bigger cities, if the Republicans have the better plan to run the country, why do big cities continue voting Democrat?
They lean more liberal. That's why they call
Why?
themselves that's why they call themselves progressive. They
But why
think that
is
they
that? Why do they lean more liberal?
because that's I mean I'm not going to try to say anything negative or get you in trouble on here, but that's
Use a synonym. I'm not gonna ban you no matter what you say. But if you want to use a synonym so that the TikTok gods still mess with you, do that. But I'd like to get your opinion.
I'm just going to say that's where all the weird people hang out. That's saying it nicely. You know what I'm saying? That's nicely. That's
Well,
where all the
let's
weird.
go with that. Why
Okay.
do weird people tend to vote Democrat?
Because they see that that's the way to, a lot of these people that take, they see that as the government being friendly. They don't see it as that's bankrupting the government. It's just like the people that play the lottery. People play the lottery because they think they're going to get something for nothing. But statistically, you're more likely to die on a plane crash, to get hit by a hurricane, hit by lightning, blah, blah, blah. That's just, you go to the city because you know that that's where all the welfare is, that's where all the money is, that's where you can get an easy job, that's where you can get the handouts, the food,
But
the
is
food
it?
bank.
Wait a minute. In regards to going to the city because that's where all the welfare is, isn't welfare a state issue? That's not a city issue, is it?
But you can go to a city. Look at all the homeless people in the big cities. You don't see that hardly as bad in the small towns because, just like in the song, we take care of our own. You don't see that in the big city. Did you ever see that little thing they did where the kids walking in a big city, and they pretend to take the child, and everybody walking down the sidewalk doesn't care. They don't care. They see a kid getting kidnapped, and they're too busy on their phone. They're too busy going to work. They're too busy getting a bus. They don't care about that kid getting kidnapped. That was just a social experiment. If you ever watch that social experiment where
Yeah,
the
I've
kid
seen
gets
it. I've
kidnapped,
seen it. In the
yeah,
big cities, the big city
yeah,
people are
big
so busy
city people,
they don't know their neighbors and stuff. But how
yeah,
do you
big city
respond to
people.
folks in the comments suggesting that when it comes to welfare, there are far more welfare recipients in rural areas than in the city?
Now, if you look at statistics, you look at the numbers, everybody says that the red states get more money. Okay, but they don't want to keep diving deeper and find out that in the red states, the blue cities are the one that's bankrupting the whole state. That's the only reason everybody says that the red states take all the money. The red states get more handouts from the federal government, which is true, but then you got to dive a little deeper. If you dive a little deeper, you'll find out that the big cities in the red states are the ones that take the money from that red state. It's a
Yeah, but if
fact.
you are the governor of a red state, all of those are your cities. You don't get to blame the lower mayor or the county professional that's in that. If you are the governor of that state and your state is taking all the revenue from the rest of the country, as the governor of those red states, you're equally as responsible as, say, the mayor of Jackson, Mississippi, or Birmingham. You don't get
Yeah.
to just blame the mayors. Those red governors are responsible for that, right?
The governors are just sitting back like Hogan that ran the blue state of Maryland and doing the same thing that the blue governors are doing. That's why I don't blame the blue city governors and the mayors. They
You
both are
just blame Gavin. Wait a minute. You just blame Gavin Newsom to open the conversation up.
well, he's an idiot. I just pointed out one idiot, but there's a lot of idiots. You know what I'm saying? Look at Hogan. Look at Hogan. I come from
Okay.
Maryland. I moved to Pennsylvania. I came from where
Right.
Hogan was. Look what Hogan did to Maryland. He went out and bought all those breathing ventilators from his wife's country. And they found out that they didn't have a UL listing on any of those ventilators during COVID. And they couldn't use them legally because that's how stupid he is. He only saw it as putting money in his wife's company's pocket and his wife's country's pocket. I think she was from South Korea. But, that was just another idiot running another state that doesn't care. and I could just keep saying a governor after governor after governor. They're all the same. You know, you can't choose
So
a
they're all like Gavin Newsom. It's just not Gavin Newsom. It's a bunch
yeah.
of red governors that are just like him.
Yeah, yeah. Gavin
Okay.
Newsom's just the top of the pile. He's just the biggest idiot in the country right now. And I can't
He,
believe anybody would support that guy.
he could be. Well, what about Ron DeSantis? What do you think of DeSantis? He's a governor.
I think he's doing things the right way. I mean, you know, I haven't seen anything that he's done that is even considered racist. You know, he stood up to Disney, one of the biggest companies in America, and he's doing the right thing. Because, you know, they had their own police force. That's stupid. To police your own self is one of the dumbest things you could ever give anybody the privilege of having. You know, you don't police your own self.
Okay. So when you say you haven't seen anything racist from Ron DeSantis, do you see Ron DeSantis as an ally of the LGBT community? Do you think they have any reason to dislike him like they do?
Well, you know, a lot of the things, the LGBTQIAF, whatever letters and numbers they got this month, uh, I think that they're out there with Newsom. You know what I'm saying? They're, to say it lightly, weird. You know,
But
I think
you didn't quite answer the question. Do you see Ron DeSantis as an ally of the LGBT community?
no, and I don't think anyone's rightly so that if they were brought up correctly, and I don't care what people say, I don't care what people respond to this statement as,
Okay.
I don't think it's the right way of life. Period.
Why is that?
It's not normal. You could say there's normalcy to it, but I don't think that it's a way of life uh, that's for the family. A family community is a man, a wife, and child. Period. I don't care what they
So
say or
let me ask it to you this way. Now there are rumors, at least from someone like Stormy Daniels, that Trump brought her into the house and was cheating on his wife. Do you think Trump is following the right way of life in terms of family?
Well, you know, back in the 60s, I know for a fact, I'm old enough to know that, you know, back in the 60s, that was just the way that it was done. You know, there's a lot of husbands that cheated on wives, but they went home to their wives at night. The wives knew it. Look at Jackie Onassis. Jackie Onassis is a prime candidate to show you the way that it was back then. She knew that her husband was cheating on her with Marilyn Monroe. Everybody knew it. But it was the norm back then. I'm not saying it's right or wrong. You know what I'm saying?
But so you don't think, you said you're not saying it's right or wrong. How do you think the women back in the 60s felt to know that their husband is out there banging somebody else? Do you think they also thought it was not, they didn't know if it was right or wrong?
Well, I'm sure everybody, I mean, even the guys knew it was wrong. I mean, even in your heart, you know it's wrong.
Okay, that's what I'm getting at. That's what I'm getting at.
Yeah.
All right, I got to moving on. Amps, always a pleasure. Definitely look forward to talking to you again in the future sometime.
Nice talking to you. Just tell you, I'm coming to you live from South Carolina.
Nikki Haley, shout out. That would you put her in there instead of Trump? We might be able to talk about something.
Oh, hell no. Not Nikki Haley. Oh, hell no. No way. No way.
All right, Amps.
I'd take Kennedy over her.
Oh no, I gotta go. Look, looking in the comments. Wow, I see some strong comments. Tap the screen, get your boy up to 40,000 likes. You know what we do here. MAGA friendly, all day, every day. Liberals are welcome as well. We don't block, ban, or censor anyone for their commentary. Last but not least, yeah, Miss Julie, thank you for the hat and mustache. First one of the day, I appreciate that. Real quick, we don't block, ban, or censor anybody for their commentary, and I definitely will never be accused of talking down a guest. I allow folks to get their point across. We do believe in free speech, so understand that is the purpose. Nice crane, D. Beautiful. Thank you. So we're looking in the comments. Tammy Rushing says Trump is not a racist. So why do so many folks think otherwise? That's an interesting point. Interesting statement. Why do so many folks think otherwise? Hell yeah, she has less baggage. Yeah, you're talking about Nikki Haley. The guy was weird. You guys got me cracking up here. Also, if you enjoy civilized dialogue from both sides of the aisle, without any fear of the host block, banning, or censoring you, or even trying to sway your damn opinion without an intelligent conversation, you are in the right place. Follow the program, helps out the algorithms, tend to bring in more MAGA. which we always appreciate. Going back to the box, we're asking a question that obviously is a controversial question, particularly because we're asking it to folks of all backgrounds. Why is it that African Americans tend to focus more on racism, systemic racism, police corruption, and misconduct when statistical probability of something nefarious happening to an African American is highly likely to be from another African American? Why is that? Is it a case of ignoring in-house issues for some other reason? That's what we're asking. You don't have to be black to answer this damn question. You are an American. You're entitled to your opinion, and that is why you're here. Going back to the box, Pharaoh, appreciate you holding. Good afternoon. Welcome to the program. So what do you think, Pharaoh? I saw you holding and appreciate that. What do you think?
I think that we need to get to the bottom of this answer right now. I've seen this question so many times in so many formats, especially on Fox News. MAGA loves this, when they highlight Chicago and all the black on black crime. I gotta tell you, man.
Chicago gets a hell of a lot of mention from Fox News. I do agree with that, but continue.
Yeah, a hell of a lot. And here's the thing, okay? Think about this. I want the 700 plus callers to think about this. When you leave your house, okay, you inherently deal with certain risks that might happen to you, okay? Inherently, some things might happen. You get in your car, you might get in an accident. You wear your seatbelt. There's risks that are going to happen that you don't necessarily have control of.
But just to interrupt, and by the way, folks, tap the damn screen. Get your boy up to 50,000. Are those risks higher when you leave your house if you happen to be an African American?
Oh, yeah, definitely. Oh,
why is that?
Higher. They're definitely higher.
Why?
And we can get to that. I want to get to that question, but I just want to finish my thought.
Sure.
We can speak on that as well. So related to the risks, people in any neighborhood, no matter where you are, you're going to find some knuckleheads that can possibly do you harm, right? They might be on drugs. They might just want what you have. There's a whole host of reasons. We usually call them criminals, right? So you have a risk of having a interaction with a criminal, regardless of color. And if something bad happens, okay, to you, to your family members, it could kind of make sense that, so-and-so went out, they had an interaction with a criminal, and they're no longer here, right?
Yeah, but I don't know if that quite answers. You're basically saying, whites are, criminalized by whites, blacks are criminalized by blacks. I get that. But the black community tends to focus on things outside of the fact that they are most likely to be victimized by black people. Whites don't do that. Obviously, white people are not complaining about systemic racism and police misconduct. African Americans are. Why is there a difference?
And here's the reason why. It is because we see a lot of black folks coming to their demise in the hands of law enforcement, okay? Now, it may be, on a percentage basis, a higher risk for you to meet your demise by some criminal activity.
Wait a minute. Here's where I have an issue with that. And I do agree that there's a hell of a lot of African Americans being mistreated by cops all over the news and all over TV. But if you compare the amount of African Americans you see having problems with cops, even when the cop is completely wrong, versus how many African Americans have a problem with another African American, it's got to be 1,000 to 1 or more.
And that's my point. Even if it was 100,000 to 1, you should not expect to meet your demise from law enforcement that are supposed to be there to serve and protect you, not criminals. And by the way, that you pay your tax dollars to. That is not a risk that you should ever have to face. The criminal element is a risk that you should be able to live with. Not saying that you accept it. You can do things to try to prevent the black on black crime. But that should be the focus. There should never have to be a focus at all on meeting your demise on those that are supposed to protect and serve you, that you're paying your tax dollars to. So when the statistics are shown and brought up about, oh, well, you're more likely to die of a black, what? That is not a apple to apple discussion. There should never be a discussion related to the comparison of what a criminal may do to you versus what the government or state official that you pay your hard-earned dollar and taxes to protect you to do.
So because black on black crime or crime in general is just a part of walking around in society, and the police doing it, as you say, they're tax paid, they shouldn't be doing it. We're focusing more on them, even though the danger is coming from the other side.
Yes, and I understand the point, and there's also a downward spiral effect, because if the police are mistreating you, right, and unaliving you when they should be protecting and serving you, then it is even harder to then tackle the real root cause of the higher risk, because you cannot call someone to help you that may unalive you as well. So you then have a community that doesn't want to speak out, that doesn't want to call the police, that doesn't have a trust. So how can you even begin to solve the other issues within the black community if you can't solve and get rid of a problem that should never have existed?
So do you believe that in most major urban areas in this country, if you're being victimized and you dial the police, you can't depend on them to come help you, that they may kill you too? Is that what you're saying?
I'm saying that a logical, reasonable person is going to call the police if there is a serious risk of, them bodily harm, but it is at their own risk. We know that a black person calling the police are more likely to have to prove to the police upon initiation that they are, not carrying a weapon or doing thing or part of the crime itself, than if Karen called and said they are bothering me. I mean, we now have videos and iPhones, and we can watch Cops, and we can watch all of these programs. So we know, that discussion ended or should have ended with the Rodney King beating. We know, what happens when a black person either commits a crime and is treated much more harshly, okay, for running a stop sign or not pulling over for the police in time or evading the police. I watch it every day. Not every day, but once in a while I watch it and see that white offenders are treated the way they're supposed to be.
So let me ask you this. This is coming straight out the comment section, obviously aimed at you. Max in the comments says this guy is blind and one-sided. I guess cops don't face being unalive. So he's suggesting that cops go through a hell of a lot, and the way you're reflecting upon cops does not take into consideration the dangers they face. How do you respond to that?
I respond to that with unconscious bias. I understand the risks that are posed to the police, but I believe that unconsciously they believe that they are at a greater threat level when they encounter a person of color versus white. Inherently, they already are looking to draw either a club instrument, a stun gun, or the other pew pew. I just believe that inherently. I don't think that the police are separate from our overall society. They're a microcosm of the way we think. I don't think that non-police don't think the same way. And you can see the way that it plays out in many interactions with people.
So why do you believe, and I've talked to a couple other callers about this. Why do you believe that if African Americans believe that the police force has a major issue, why there are not more African Americans willing to join the force and make changes from within? Why do you believe there's such a resistance to do that?
I don't know that answer. I'm not going to get up here and say, that I know something that I don't. I see black police officers, African American officers. I'm in Atlanta, Georgia. I'm in DeKalb County, where I see many black Americans. And I'll tell you, because I used to live in Chicago as well, the interaction is much different. In fact, there's hardly any interaction because
Hang on, hold on 1 second. I have this. I saw this in the comments, and we can both discuss it. Tap the screen, by the way, folks. Get your boy up to 60,000. When I asked you the question, why don't more African Americans join the police department and make changes from within? In the comments section, Taya stated it means working a full-time job. What do you do with a comment like that? In other words, more blacks don't join the police department because it means they got to go to work full time.
yeah, so I would ignore it. You ignore, kind
Yeah.
of ignorance. It makes no sense, and that's part of the unconscious bias. There's other things that have been
You
tagged.
think that you think that shit is unconscious? Seem like they wide awake to me. Sounds racist as hell.
Yeah, yeah.
Unconscious.
Yeah, you're right. You're right.
That shit
I
sounds
revised
racist
that
as hell.
comment, but what I'm saying is that those type of comments, they end up sticking even to someone that is not racist, and they have an unconscious bias to it. Is that blacks are lazy, blacks are dangerous, blacks are not honest. All of those things play into all the way up to the police force because they're the same people as we are, and the interactions with us can be violent or turn really bad really quickly. So why again do blacks not focus more on the community and the risks posed to black on black crime, even though it's at a higher percentage? Because it just should not be a comparison. It should not be a
That's
discussion.
yeah, I get what you're saying, but at the end of the day, people are getting killed, whether you want to compare it or not. We don't you believe that we need to do a hell of a lot more focusing on what's happening in our communities? People are losing their lives.
Yeah, so let's start with getting things that should be at a higher standard. And when I say a higher standard, the police should be at a much higher standard than a criminal. So let's get that solved first, and let's rebuild the community of blacks trusting law enforcement because they're not unaliving our kids. And then we can start to attack and focus more on the black on black and curing the communities. And racism plays out in a lot of parts of law enforcement and the justice system as well that you mentioned. And one thing that when you were talking about it came to me, let's talk about the meth epidemic, and I'll just say CRACK because I don't know
Yeah,
the TikTok
yeah.
gods.
I get
It's
it. I get it. I
interesting.
get it.
It's interesting if you think about both of those epidemics. I mean, which is more dangerous, right? You
Hey,
would think that they're both the same. If not, if anything, you might say that the meth is a little bit more because there's chemicals and things that can kill you, unalive you right away. But when the justice system looks at the two, they will put, or they did put, for the crack epidemic, a war tag on it and house African Americans 15 years, 20 years plus just for possession, where the METH dealers here, they might get 2 years if they
yeah.
have a lot.
Yeah.
So,
That's
yeah,
not
so,
even disputable. Yeah, that's not
yeah,
even disputable that even cocaine, because crack is the only illegal drug in crack is cocaine. But to make it cheaper for folks in the inner city to be able to afford it, the vast majority of the products in crack are legal. It's only about 10% or so pure cocaine, which is the only illegal drug, yet having cocaine, which for the most part is 100% illegal, carried a lesser sentence than crack. So your point is well taken. I got to move it on, though, Farrell.
all right,
Appreciate you
brother.
coming in
I
here.
appreciate you so much. Have a good, I appreciate
Absolutely.
what you're doing.
Absolutely. Thank There's no denying that for a large portion of the drug war, the drug that is predominantly used by African Americans, which was crack, did receive a harsher sentence than some other drugs that were far more dangerous. I mean, even to the point where even Republican politicians like Paul Ryan and some of them stepped up and said, you need to fix this. Unfortunately, by the time they stepped up and said that, thousands, if not millions of lives had been ruined. So There's no denying about that. But nevertheless, we're going to go back to the comments. As always, tap the screen. 70,000 likes is possible. 600 plus of you in here. I do appreciate that. You could be anywhere you want to be on this app. The fact that you're here with your boy is an honor. We don't block, ban, or censor anyone for their commentary. Program is always will remain MAGA friendly. We don't run echo chambers, civilized dialogue. Both sides of the aisle. You may hear something you disagree with. You may say something other folks disagree with. Nobody gives a damn. H2O. I have never seen that shit, but it looked beautiful. Wow, the graphics on that. Thank you. H2O. Shit. All right, looking in the comments. Wow, that was a thank you. Thank you. The only truly major racial disparity I consider really systemic is in sentencing. Well, to get to the point where you can have a racial disparity in the sentencing, you got to assume that the police officers and prosecutors are also doing the same thing to get to the folks to sentence. I mean, if we know that African Americans, let's say for instance, I'm a prosecutor and I know that Hispanics or whites or African Americans are more likely to be sentenced, and I'm running as an elected official, which a hell of a lot of folks in our court system are, we reward our judicial politicians based on being tough on crime. If I know that a certain group of people are being sentenced more harshly, those are the folks that are going to help my campaign. So those are the folks that I want officers to bring to me. So I'm going to do things to make sure the officers know I am more preferable to these type of people coming to me because I can get a better sentence for them. And when I run my campaign, I can now say I put people in jail for longer. It's a whole assembly line of how this works. Think about it. Cops tend to be rewarded based on how many folks they arrest. Nobody rewards you if you don't have a bunch of arrests. And that whole bullshit thing about they don't have quotas is a lie. If you join the police force and the average cop is pulling over 10 people, you think you're going to get away with pulling over 2? 10 is your damn quota, whether they tell you or not. But we reward cops based on arrests. We reward judges based on tougher sentences. We reward senators in Congress based on tougher laws. The whole system is designed to reward incarceration. Everybody is doing better when they're putting people in the system. No one gets rewarded based on reducing recidivism or making sure people get out and get their lives better. There is no reward for that. The reward is for putting them in. That's why we have the issue we have. Going back to the bots. Appreciate you folks tapping the screen. Hydro 420. Good afternoon, Hydro. Why do you believe African Americans that look like me tend to focus more on systemic racism in the police than the actual crimes in our community?
Well, it to me greatly depends on where you live. I live out in the country, so a lot of what you're talking about is not really an issue. We're just a bunch of rednecks out here riding quads and whatnot, but I can clearly see when you're in a city like New York City and whatnot, it does become an issue. You got to remember one thing.
Yeah, go ahead.
Police officers, people in government, we're all human beings. It depends on the personality and what their viewpoint is. There's no standard set. There's no test that you can give that says, hey, you're about to become a police officer. Do you hold the standards that the community expects you to hold? That's a deep within held personality issue. In other words, there's no psychological evaluation, no accurate test to be able to determine whether, I don't care what color you are, because color to me doesn't matter. It's the personality. There's no test to say, hey, I'm equality and I'm going to do what's right for the American people, or I am some gun-ho guy who's looking to get a black, looking to get a, you get where I'm coming from on that.
Yeah.
So my whole thing, go ahead.
Here's the thing. You ever heard the phrase, this car will be monitored for quality assurance?
Yes. Absolutely.
The, the point I'm trying to make is they need to do more audits on the police. When you watch YouTube, there are citizens that routinely audit police to see if they know if they actually know the law. Such as if there's a police call, maybe a citizen will stand across the street with a camera aimed at them. And the
Right.
police continue to fail these audits over and over again. Do you mind if I search your car? Not without a warrant. And the police go ballistic and still go through your shit. Could you show me your driver's license? Well, you don't have a legitimate reason to ask for it. And the cops do not understand the law. So when I say this call may be monitored for quality assurance, what we need to have is, like, whether it's IAB or the internal affairs, do routine audits on police to see if they know the damn law. Have the cop pull you over, drive by a cop speeding. When he pulls you over, cuss his ass out and see how he acts. Because cursing somebody out is protected free speech. You need to find out cops that do not know the law. And I think doing that would get more of the type of atmosphere you're talking about. Hydro, unfortunately, you're breaking up bad.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, there you go. Okay, go ahead.
Can you hear me now?
Loud and clear.
Yeah, like I said, I'm in the middle of the country, so my reception fades in and out. But look at it from a law enforcement point of view. They don't know what John Q. Public they're about to deal with. They don't know whether they're going to be a pillar of the community and AJ squared away, or they're going to be the complete opposite. They're trained to be able to hold some sort of standard, which I agree with what you said. The standard isn't there yet. But they're in their mind thinking everybody they encounter is going to be some sort of low-life scumbag that they're going to have a conflict with. They're just not trained properly to analyze the type of human being they're about to deal with, no matter what the infraction or even if it's just an investigation. They're not trained.
Here's my simple answer to that. Unless your life is in danger, your job should be to de-escalate as much as possible. Like I mentioned, swearing at a cop, most cops will escalate that scene. If you tell a cop you can't search my car without a warrant, most cops will escalate. Teaching cops that it is your job to de-escalate a scene unless somebody's life is in danger, and holding them accountable when they're out trying to defend their ego or demand respect, which is not a job. That's some cop just, trying to push his weight around. You should never defend your ego or demand respect. You're not paid to do that. When you catch cops doing that, they should be held accountable.
I agree. And the other thing is, too, as a citizen, comply with the police officers telling you, because you have a recourse, and that's in the court of law. If the police officer is doing something illegal, you can take it to court. But comply. Don't resist, because like you said, it's only going to make it harder on yourself and escalate the situation. Just comply. Record it if you can. Comply in a calm, cool, collective manner. And then if you don't feel that you've been served just, take it to court.
But how confident do you feel? Let's say a cop pulls you over and asks to search your car, and you tell him you can't do it without a warrant, and he does it anyway. So you comply as you suggested, and then you take it to court. How confident do you feel that if the cop said, I didn't do that, or he actually gave me consent, how confident do you feel the courts would even take your word?
Well, it's going to depend greatly, Mr. Handsome, is if there's a body cam and if I'm recording as well. That's dispute. What is the word? That's non-disputable evidence. In other words, he's got a body cam and you've been recording. So there you go. You got to protect yourself. As a citizen, you have to protect yourself and your rights.
Yeah, but you're also expecting the body cam to be turned on. That is not even a law in every department.
That's correct. That's why I said you do your part on your end, whether you have a dash cam or you have your cell phone cam going, record it. It's well within your constitutional rights to record any type of stop or interaction with law enforcement. That's your right.
So if you're recording a stop and the police take the phone out of your hand and actually delete the video, and you go to court and tell them, you think the court system will believe you?
Well, then what I consider that, and believe me, I'm not racist. I consider everybody equal. Honestly, I do. I consider everybody a human being, and we all have personalities. That would be what I call in a good old boys network, where you're in some small town where they're corrupt. And basically you're not going to come out ahead because the judge probably knows the cop, see him on the daily.
It's interesting because we're talking about police in the entire United States, and you go to small town, and you're not the first person. I'm hearing caller after caller keep talking about these small towns, which brings up the Jason Aldean song. Is there something we should know, particularly from a minority standpoint, about small towns? Is there an issue with small towns?
Well, I
Oh,
can't give
Hydro.
you a yes or no.
Yeah, you breaking up, man. I'm gonna have to move it on. Damn, I wanted to hear from Hydro. Hydro, your signal is too unintelligible. I had to move it out, but I do appreciate you coming in there, Hydro. You always welcome back. Looking in the comments, we do know our neighbors, says Tammy. That is 100% true. In small towns, things tend to be more intimate. People do know their neighbors. However, the problem with that, certainly from a standpoint of we take care of our own, is that if you know your neighbors and you see somebody in your small town that doesn't belong there, that mindset kicks in. Who the hell is this? This is when you can start following people around. This is where profiling comes into place. And unfortunately, actions like George Zimmerman chasing Trayvon Martin through the night, because people like that always seem to get away. That's what he told the 911 operator. People like that always get away with it. So when you have that mindset that I know my neighbors, we protect our own, and here's a guy walking down the block that's not from the neighborhood, it instantly gives you that predatory, protect the neighborhood mindset. So now you're staring at this guy, expecting the chance of him doing something wrong. It just increases the likelihood of something happening because you're already on guard. That's what happened to both Trayvon Martin and Ahmaud Arbery, is that the neighbors got up and went chasing these people on the grounds that they were doing something wrong, and ultimately took both of their lives. Looking in the comments, most police that get shot start with calm interactions. True. That is true. But at the same time, like what me and the last caller was talking about, a lot of times also, it's a hell of a lot of police officers out here that are not just serving and protecting. They're out defending their ego and demanding respect. Don't call me sir, don't call me whatever name, you just, look, man, I don't have any idea. Look, man, I don't know why you put, well, I'm not a man, I'm officer, want you to call him by a special name. No officer has a right to demand that. You can call a cop whatever the hell you want, up to and including pig, which is obviously disrespectful to call a cop a pig. But he don't have a right to do anything to you for calling him that. We know a lot of cops will, though. That is what I'm talking about, defending ego and demanding respect in concert with the law. That you don't have a right to do that. And a lot of interactions take place because of that. You pull over somebody who is angry, and as opposed to just simply giving them their ticket and letting them bicker on, the cop takes odds with it, and now he escalates the situation where it could lead to a fight or something else. So, as I stated, cops, their primary purpose should be, under any situation, if at all possible, to de-escalate situations. You don't have, this is what I say about President Trump when people defend him for the name caller. You don't have to show up to every fight you're involved in. If somebody is trying to invite you into an argument or a fight, you don't have to respond to it. Just write the dude his damn ticket and move on. Let them argue. But a lot of folks believe you're disrespecting them, or you're going against their ego, and then they take it to the next level, and before you know it, you don't have to shoot somebody that you wouldn't have if you had to just let him vent his frustration. Looking in the comments, it takes two to argue. Yeah. And it also takes somebody else to answer the argument. You don't have to argue back at an angry patriot or an angry citizen. If you pull somebody over and they're yelling Black Lives Matter or cops suck or something like that, you don't have to defend the police to that guy. Just let him get his frustration across. You're not going to change his mind by beating his ass. You really think you're gonna beat the love of police into the guy? Just let him yell. Move it on. You're not going to convince everybody. Hell, I'm running a MAGA-friendly program, and I got a hell of a lot of folks on the right and left that hate my ass. You're not going to convince everybody to like you. Just move it on. Looking in the comments, and Tammy Rushing says, yes, it works both ways. 100% true, but the cops are trained. The cops are giving police powers and special powers. The citizens are not given that. So the onus certainly should be on the cops to be proactive and above the fray in regards to a regular citizen. Keep in mind, when I'm pulled over and told to keep my hands at 10 and 2 for the cops' safety, he's the one with the gun. He's the one with tactical advantage over my shoulder. He's the one with infinite backup. Why the hell is he scared when I'm sitting in the car with a seatbelt on? Yet we're told to do this stuff for their safety. So that's all I'm saying, is that they have the training. They should be the one that is above the fray, not the citizen. But we've taught police officers, as one of my guys stated, one of the callers stated, that on every interaction, something bad may happen to you. So the cops pull people over with the mindset that something bad may happen. And what they don't like is when they pull a citizen over that has the same mindset. You feel when you pull somebody over that anything at any given time, your life can be in danger. But you want the cop to feel like you're the greatest on earth, and you don't want the cop to fear you. And it doesn't work that way. It just doesn't. All right, looking in the comments. You do not live in the country. We also have guns. I'm from Chicago. You guys in the country talk about how many guns are in Chicago. What are you talking about? Plenty of guns in my town. There is no town in America at this point where there are not plenty of guns. Even towns with tough gun laws have plenty of guns. If you live in America, within 100 feet of you, there's a gun. Unless you live by your damn self. If you live in any major city in America, there's a gun within 100 feet of you. Period. There's that many guns in this country. Looking in the comments, try that in small. I'm from Chicago and we got plenty of guns. Yeah, there's plenty of guns in Chicago, New York, Philadelphia, Boston, every liberal city there is. If you live in a liberal city, there's a gun within 100 feet of you. Damn the Second Amendment. People have guns. Everyone knows someone with a gun. That is a perfect statement. Hustle muscle. Going back to the box. Tap the screen. Probably won't get 100,000 likes, but I'd like to get 80, 90 if you guys do not let your thumbs be lazy. Moo, the Tuxedo Cat. Good afternoon. Welcome back to the pro. Impossible. Guns aren't allowed in Chicago. Max, that's not true anymore. Chicago has loosened its gun restrictions. That's no longer true. Folks on the right may want you to believe that, but in Chicago, if you want a gun to protect yourself, you can get one. You may not be able to get a belt-fed 50 cal, but if you need a firearm for self-defense in Chicago, you can get one. Moo, legally, you can get one. Moo, good afternoon.
What's up, man? Dude, he said white people are so good at crime, and that's why there are more black people in prison. He said white people are so good at crime, bro. We should all be so proud right now, man. We are so good at crime, my dude.
Well,
But
there's some validity to that. When
yeah,
you think about in America right now, who's being accused of committing all the crimes? It's black folks. When you
yeah.
look at the history of America, there's a hell of a lot of white crimes. People were getting raped, lynched, and murdered, and whites got away with it. Blacks do not. So
Let me
maybe
let
they.
me let me run
Go
some
ahead.
things by you real quick, man. Do you think it might be that the fact that, police are more likely to be in a poor black neighborhood than a white neighborhood, right? Because most of the wealth in the country belongs to white people, right? Most of the
True.
wealth. And
True.
most black people don't even have homes, right? Most of the homes in the country also belong to white people as well, right? So,
True.
if I'm a cop, I'm probably not going to go into a well-to-do white neighborhood. I might run into a judge, man. I'm probably not going to run into a judge in Kensington, Philadelphia. You know what I mean? That's probably not going to happen. So if I'm a cop, I'm going to probably stick to those poor minority neighborhoods, man. That way I don't get in any trouble either. You know what I'm saying?
So cops are essentially being opportunists in cases like that.
Of course, man, you're going to have more poverty in poorer neighborhoods because the reason you have crime is because of poverty, right? People commit
Yeah.
crimes usually because they're poor and they're desperate, or they're poor and they need something, right? That's usually why crime happens, right? So that
Well,
makes
how
sense.
do you respond to
It's not
folks?
because white people are inherently better at crime.
But how do you respond to folks who might say in some of the rural areas, like down in Alabama or West Virginia, there's some very poor people there, and they're not committing crimes like that?
How do you know?
Yeah, that's a good
How do
point.
you know?
That's a good point.
Okay.
We don't hear them complaining about it. That's one thing. No, you
I
don't hear.
mean, am I going to piss all over my backyard?
If you feel like crime is out of control, you might say something, right?
Maybe, again, do gang members, they're committing the crimes. Do they tend to knock their own block?
No, they tend to
Okay.
rob it.
All right, cool.
Yeah,
I
I
figure
get your
white people
point.
would probably be similar, right? They're probably not going to knock their own block either, right?
That's true. That sounds like around here we take care of our own.
Yeah, well, I mean, of course, right? That happens in general, But it's very easy to tell America is still divided up by race, right? Especially in the big cities. You can hear that, you can see that, where the white section begins, where the African American
Yeah.
section begins, where the Hispanic section begins, right? You can still see these
But
things, right?
since you brought up big cities, let me ask you this. I asked a few
Yeah,
callers back, because
yeah.
folks would suggest that African Americans keep voting for the same politicians, meaning Democrats. What is it about big cities
Uh-huh.
that seem to avoid the Republican Party?
I mean, your values are just god awful. You know what I mean? You guys, you want to get rid of all. I mean, look at the women in Texas, bro. Look at the women in Texas. This is why we avoid them, because they say they care about life, right? But instead of saving babies, instead now they want them to be stillborn and the mothers to see that, right? Instead of there's 10 women in Texas right now testifying, right? Instead of protecting life, y'all want women to actually see their babies come out and then pass away in front of them, right? Because that's what you're doing now, right? Because there's 10 women in Texas who are saying so in court right now. They're suing the state. So that's what you guys are up to. That's why we avoid you. You're the plague. You are
Any other example?
God, you're terrible people, man.
You talking about the Republican Party? So
Yeah,
any other
oh God.
examples?
Yeah,
Because
awful people, man.
big cities, the top 10 cities in America are all Democratic cities. I think San Antonio is the only
Let me
one
tell
of
you
the.
something real quick here. Let me tell you something, man. You guys should. One thing Joe Biden did that was good, man, and they've been ignoring the middle of the country for a very long time. But a couple things Joe Biden did that was good, man, is there is an Intel plant being built in Utah, there is an Intel plant being built in Ohio, and there is a TSM plant being built in Arizona. Now, the TSM plant said they can't get enough skilled workers. Arizona is still supposed to be a red state, right? So, where's your guys' skills at? Now they have to import people from Taiwan because y'all ain't got no skills.
Mm, yeah. Well, shit. I mean, you can have other Americans from other parts of the country.
Yeah,
Arizona's not
but you
that
know
bad.
who's gonna do it? You know who's gonna take care of that, man? My homies in New York will take care of that. My homies in Cali and Silicon Valley will take care of that, bro, because we got those skills. And y'all can stay sitting in the Walmarts, and y'all can stay sitting working your coal miner jobs and your janitor jobs and your truck driver jobs. And we'll go make the semiconductors, bro, and we'll go do all the AI shit that's coming out that's gonna make all the money and take all your jobs away. And
Are
you
you
can still be mad. You
suggesting
can be
that?
mad at
Are
the
you
left, you know.
suggesting that? But are you
What?
suggesting that liberal employees are more educated than Republicans?
Yes, absolute, bro. We have all the jobs. They're not wrong, bro. They're not wrong. We have all the jobs, dude, and it's going to continue that way because your jobs are going away. The jobs that you depend on, we're going to take them away from you. It's not the Hispanics. It's not the immigrants. It's the technology we have coming out that's going to take your job away. And you guys are so busy focused on this immigrants. Like, the numbers are going down, by the way. The people coming across the border is going down. I don't see you guys giving Joe Biden any credit for that.
But
I criticize Biden.
with the people coming across the border, do you think that this entrapment by Governor Abbott, with the rolling balls in the net and the barbed wire in the water, do you think that has any reason to why? Because immigration was dropping before these traps were put in the water. But do you believe what Greg Abbott is doing in Texas also is beneficial to securing the border?
I'm sorry. What did you say, my man? With the border, securing the border? I'm sorry. I
I'm talking
apologize.
about I'm talking about Governor Abbott in
Hmm.
Texas. Do you
Yeah.
believe what he is doing? He got these rolling ball contraptions
And
that you cannot
again,
swim
bro,
over.
you
They have nets under them, so you
know,
can't swim under them. And then he also has razor wire in the water. Do you think that
yeah,
that is
yeah.
beneficial to securing the border?
No, I mean, people who want, the border patrol themselves, bro. There were border patrol who would not do it. Thank goodness for those people to speak out. They are the ones who notified everybody about that. So it was Abbott's own employees who dimed him out, right? Because he's such a schlep, right? That his own people had to dime him out, bro. They actually had a conscience. And they couldn't throw those people back into again, they want to protect life, right? But there's children in the water drowning. There's mothers in the water watching their children drown. And y'all are the party of life, right? I mean, over and over and over again, we see that you guys watch children pass away, watch these circumstances where children are getting their benefits taken away. And you guys are okay with all this, man. All you care about is putting Trump back in office. And who did Hunter Biden stick his thing into? And what's on his lap? Y'all don't care about real issues, man. Y'all are so
Mhm.
lost. It's incredible. It's incredible.
So in the comments, Brown's backer responds by saying, well, if you don't want this to happen, don't come here illegally. How do
It's
you, I mean,
So, bro, you justify people running into ways that, again, you don't care about children. You double down. That's cool, man. I'm a double down too, right? So obviously you don't care about children, right? Because there are children getting caught in, regardless of whether they're here legally or not, right? They're children, bro. So you just justified children getting hurt. So that's fine. Double down. I'm a double down on that. You are probably a very sadistic type of person. You like hearing about children getting hurt. And you don't actually care about children's lives, bro. It's all fake. It's all phony from you. So there's my double down back to you.
wow. All right, Moo. And I tend to agree that securing the border, while important, I don't believe in deliberately causing injury, if not death, to folks that are coming in the country that way. I would rather put more manpower on there and start, and arrest folks or capture them. But trying to
The
deliberately harm people, I'm not a fan of it. But
The
I give you
border
the last
crisis is not a huge, it is a big deal, man, but really the way you fix it is you need to appoint more immigration judges and set up more immigration courts so that you can process cases more quickly and get people into the system, right? Because it's not like we don't need people coming into this country. Birth rates are low. Look at what DeSantis is doing in Florida with the labor force, right? Okay, so your state's gonna, you guys are so hopped up on this anti-LGBTQ stuff, right? He's making your state go broke. But you don't care because you're all hopped up on your anti-LGBTQ bullshit. You're busy burning books. You're busy doing all these silly things. And you're ignoring the fact that he's focusing on these silly social issues and screwing you over behind your back, man. But more power to y'all fascists.
All right, Moo. Appreciate you coming in here.
Later, man.
All right. In the comments said, Moo is abrasive but correct as fuck. I saw that. Florida is not broke. No, they're not. But just like with any legislation coming from a governor or a politician, sometimes the realization of what you've done tends to come down the line. So it could fall in the hands of another governor. But just being honest, fucking with Disney is not going to go well for Florida. There's no way I believe that. Messing with Disney, a company like that has that much of your tourism dollars in their power, that's not going to go well because there's a hell of a lot of other satellite businesses of sorts that make a lot of money off of Disney, whether it's rental car companies, hotels that are not part of the Disney properties, even the property values of surrounding structures make money because of how close they are to Disney. Hell, the airport in Orlando makes money because of Disney. If that particular amusement park, even if part of it starts to migrate to other states, it's going to hurt Florida. There's no way around that it would hurt Florida. Now, will it make the state of Florida go broke? Hell no, of course not. But that would be a huge loss to the state of Florida, and certainly to the area of Central Florida. Orlando, Sanford, Okoboji, all those little cities that are nearby, they would be hurting from that. Property values would plummet, and that would probably lead to getting rid of Ron DeSantis because you're hitting people in the pocketbook. A lot of people vote based on the economy, particularly folks on the right, vote for Trump because the economy was great. Well, if all of a sudden the value of your property is 30, 40% less or something like that because your governor made a decision that took away a hell of a lot of the interest in your area, they're not going to vote him back in because he's anti-LGBT. They're going to get rid of him. So we'll see what happens, but I don't believe that's a good fight for DeSantis. Disney has too much power. Disney losing money on their own, Disney losing money on their own with trash movies. Actually, that Black Little Mermaid did very well. I don't believe Disney is losing money with what you see are trash movies. I don't buy into that. Disney is charging over $300 a person per day is not good. Well, Disney's always been expensive. But even with the high cost of Disney, people are showing up. People are showing up. And you don't think that the surrounding hotels and folks are also raising their prices up, knowing that people are willing to pay that? All of them would suffer too. If Disney moves away, your hotel or your gas station or your restaurant's going to suffer too. So a hell of a lot of other businesses in that area that would pay a hell of a price. You've seen what happened to other towns in America like Cleveland when the steel mills left, or Detroit when the car industry reduced itself greatly. You telling me that can't happen in Florida, in Central Florida, if this big-ass amusement park starts breaking up and moving to other states that give them huge tax breaks or something like that? You telling me that can't happen in Florida? It's happened to a lot of major cities in this country. Gary, Indiana is a perfect example of what can happen when your entire industry leaves your area. It can happen. It can happen. And Ron DeSantis is flirting with that. Only TikTokers go to Disney World now. TikTok is the 6th biggest social media platform in the world. It's a lot of TikTokers. If they go to Disney World, Disney will be fine with just TikTokers going to Disney World. There's millions of TikTokers out there, so they'll be fine. They made minorities look like the bad ones. I don't quite get that. The Republicans didn't like the Little Black Mermaid. Damn right, that is 100% true. We did a show on that, and that is absolutely correct. That is absolutely correct. Almost everyone complaining that they switched up the traditional Little Mermaid with an African-American actress that I know of lean right. Yeah, there were a hell of a lot of people that complained about that. Nevertheless, folks, it is what it is. I appreciate the 83,000 likes. It's been a really good live stream. It is a lunch break live. Real quick, if you enjoy civilized dialogue from both sides of the aisle without any fear of being blocked, banned, or censored, you are in the correct place. I implore you to follow the program. We're here Monday through Friday. Program is always MAGA friendly, but liberals are welcome as well. As always, we don't talk down the guests. You don't have to agree with the host. This is not an echo chamber. Free speech reigns supreme. Nevertheless, it's your boy Tim, the handsome liberal. I gots to go.